Welcome back to another episode of the BARROW Podcast. Today, we are again looking at The Body Keeps the Score by Mr. Bessel van der Kolk. Best-selling non-fiction book about mind, brain, and body in the transformation of trauma. And the recap on the blurb one more time. The effects of trauma can be devastating for sufferers, their families, and future generations. Here, one of the world's experts on traumatic stress offers a bold new paradigm for treatment, moving away from standard talking and drug therapies and towards an alternative approach that heals mind, brain, and body.
What led you to the purchase of that particular book?
Well, this was... as I say, it was a best-selling book, and it was just much talked about. It was almost a meme, you know. The body keeps the score almost became like a phrase in pop culture, or you know, for a time there. I actually forget when this was.
That was my other question.
Yeah, Van der Kolk. I think is he South African, maybe originally, and the studies are all sort of, you know. He's US based. 2014.
Oh,
2014.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, 10 years ago, it was a global phenomenon. Yeah, and again, just to recap, we're only looking at part 3, which is the minds of children, and today we're up to episode 10, and this is going to be our last episode on this book. We're looking at chapter 10. Developmental Trauma, the Hidden Epidemic. So, when did I find out, or why did I... Yeah, it just sort of came into my field of view.
Yep.
I think I had a psych recommend it to me throughout the course of treatment. And, just gravitated towards it, thought it would be something, hey, I actually never read it, and thought, hey, when we do this project, we should open that up and have a look at it. And
it
then
might be relevant.
It might be relevant. And then as we began this process, I was like, oh, okay, like let's definitely do it. Obviously, it's not a memoir. It's a non-fiction. I don't even think it's a self-help book. It's a psychology text, basically.
Yeah, but I do like the way we've treated it in that we have listened to it.
Well, I was going to say that right at the end, but I want to say it now.
You know, I've read bits of it before.
Yeah.
But I think its message and the detail is sinking in more, listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we sort of obviously talk.
Yeah.
As we're listening.
Yeah, so I did really want to bring that up, so I'll just address it now. Like the way that Mum and I have tackled these chapters is to, right before we record this, we sit in the kitchen area, the dining room, and we listen to the audiobook of the chapter, and we make notes and we talk about it, we pause it and chat and all sorts of things. Yeah. And then we come in here and we record. And I was just going to say, like, for people who have like read books along with this show or are interested in the book episodes we do, that's not typically how we do things. But having done it, I'm like, people should do this. Yeah. Like, you know, whether with a parent or a child or just a friend, sit there and listen to an audiobook together and discuss it as it goes along. I think that would be fun.
I think with specifically those detailed analyses of conditions and society, it as I said, you take more in, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's been a really good way of doing it. This chapter, unlike the others, is probably, because it's the last chapter in this section, is more about kind of outcomes, like which is to say, looking at diagnoses, what they mean really, and perhaps what treatments should be or could be.
Sort of summing up the situation where we're at.
Yeah.
With this phenomenon.
And he has a lengthy example about the DSM-5, which is which is coming up with diagnoses. But I thought I'd read the two quotes at the beginning here, and he talks about like the research he was doing was not getting included in the textbook. So he's doing research that he thinks is kind of advancing the field, and they're actually getting kind of knocked back a bit.
Yes.
So they got from the American Psychiatric Association's rejection of their new disorder in May 2011, the notion that early childhood adverse experiences lead to substantial development disruptions is more clinical intuition than a research-based fact.
It's unbelievable.
There is no known evidence of developmental disruptions that were preceded in time in a causal fashion by any type of trauma syndrome. Now, I mean, it just puts in mind the fact that whatever industry you're in, there is an absolute moron at the top, right? Like the people in charge are so stupid. And that's coming as recently as 2011.
Yes, and it really just cuts across the reality of what people are experiencing.
Yeah.
And the problems that are becoming evident in schools and dropout rates and people's behaviours. Yeah.
Whereas on the other hand, he quotes somebody else with a PhD who says research on the effects of early maltreatment tells a different story, that early maltreatment has enduring negative effects on brain development. Our brains are sculpted by our early experiences. Maltreatment is a chisel that shapes a brain to contend with strife, but at the cost of deep, enduring wounds. Childhood abuse isn't something you get over. It is an evil that we must acknowledge and confront if we aim to do anything about the unchecked cycle of violence in this country.
Yeah, I mean, it's self-evident, surely.
Yeah. Well, you would think.
Yes,
You would think.
yes.
And yet, trying to sort of make headway with certain diagnoses, it feels like he runs into trouble. And the kind of the thing underscoring it, and I'll read from the book directly because it illustrates it best, but the thing really underscoring this chapter and really where I wanted to kind of end our discussion relating to this book is sort of on the notion that like, and I've said before, and I'll say again, that when we started the memoir and when we started this project, I did not want to write a memoir about a mental illness. I wanted to write a book about family, because if I suggested that this was about mental illness, there was an implication, well, you just treat that mental illness and it's all fine, and things can be dealt with. And my feeling was, no, there's a larger picture here. We're talking about culture over multiple generations and so on and so forth. And that really, when we're telling our story, we're telling our story in context with a whole bunch of other things. And then our behaviours and our thoughts and our feelings towards ourselves, that those things exist in context with a larger picture, which is
intergenerational patterns that occur in a family, which can have adverse effects.
And in this way, and part of what this chapter gets at, is that in this way, a diagnosis of an illness, it often obfuscates, it conceals what's really wrong. Yes, the person who is in stress, or who is distressed rather, yes, they meet the criteria for such and such illness, such and such diagnosis. So let's treat that diagnosis, illness,
with the specific medication.
But the problem is that diagnosis, that illness, is not the root of their problems. The root of their problems is their life.
Yeah.
And unless you alter their life, are you ever going to deal with their problems? And furthermore, if you... No, I had something brilliant and it's gone.
Well, the symptoms will just keep presenting.
Yeah. I think there was a little extra bit that escapes me right now, but
okay, I'll come to you later.
But it'll come to me, yeah. So he uses this example of this boy called Anthony. Okay, so Anthony was only 2.5, keep that in mind, 2.5 when he was referred to our trauma centre by a childcare centre because its employees could not manage his constant biting and pushing, his refusal to take naps, and his intractable crying, headbanging and rocking. He did not feel safe with any staff member and fluctuated between despondent collapse and angry defiance. Okay? When we met with him and his mother, he anxiously clung to her, hiding his face while she kept saying, "Don't be such a baby."
Yep.
He's 2.5. He startled when a door banged somewhere down the corridor and then burrowed deeper into his mum's lap. When she pushed him away, he sat in a corner and started to bang his head. He just does that to bug me, his mother remarked. When we asked about her own background, she told us that she'd been abandoned by her parents and raised by a series of relatives who hit her, ignored her, and started to sexually abuse her at age 13. She'd become pregnant by a drunken boyfriend who left her when she told him she was carrying his child. Anthony was just like his father, she said. A good for nothing. He's 2.5. She had had numerous violent rows with subsequent boyfriends, but she was sure that this had happened too late at night for Anthony to notice. Now, he goes on to write this, and this is the crucial thing.
Yeah.
If Anthony were admitted to a hospital, he would likely be diagnosed with a host of different psychiatric disorders. Depression, oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, reactive attachment disorder, ADHD, and PTSD. None of these diagnoses, however, would clarify what was wrong with Anthony, that he was scared to death and fighting for his life, and he did not trust that his mother could help him.
Yep.
So, the question becomes, does Anthony, and Anthony's a stand-in for all of us, does Anthony actually really have
Any of those?
Does Anthony really have depression, oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, reactive attachment disorder, ADHD, and PTSD? Or does Anthony have a life that is unbearable? That is at the crux of this chapter, and that has been at the crux of my insistence not to drive this into a discussion about mental illness. Because talking about mental health and mental illness has become a pastime for people who want to sort of say something about themselves from a, like, you know, I drink protein shakes and I care about mental health. You know, it's like, okay, all right. Do you? Though? Do you?
Yes. So, relating it to us,
Sure.
yeah, you've got a lifetime of not really looking at the life.
Yeah, sure. But on this particular thing, it's like the medication and the treatments and the therapies that you're assigned after a diagnosis is all to treat the diagnosis.
Yeah.
But is that the treatment, or is it that your life needs to change radically?
Oh, well, that's right.
Right.
That's the question and the answer there.
You know, like,
And, you know, when I finally seek therapy in a more serious way, I mean, I fleetingly sought it at the time of your father's desertion. So years later, when I keep exhibiting certain behaviours, my parents agree, oh, isn't it great you're going to therapy? And how's that going? You feeling better? That, you know, that notion of, well, everything's kept the same, but
Yeah.
this will eradicate certain
Well,
types of behaviour.
the other question, or another way to ask that question, when we use like that example of the Anthony character there, the little boy, is like, would Anthony have any of these? Would he meet any of the diagnostic criteria for these mental illnesses if he was in a different circumstance?
No, because if he was in a stable circumstance, he wouldn't be exhibiting those behaviours.
Mm.
And I think this comes to our situation and comes to your questioning of me and looking back over the years. You know, not feeling in control, no agency, and none of that changes.
Yeah, because the circumstances don't
Because
change.
the circumstances have always been the same.
Yeah, so who you're surrounded by and what your circumstances are, and this, I mean, this pertains to social class. I mean, social class is also addressed in this.
Yeah.
You know, like your environmental factors and the conditions of your life, like these are the things that really matter. And that's not to end the nature nurture debate, but truly, it is mostly nurture. I think, like, yes, some people are predisposed to certain things. I believe that too, and I also think that. But my feeling is this, right? Like I received diagnoses for several things, right? And the way I would describe it, and the way at least one mental health professional described it to me, for me, because this was my kind of where I was leaning in the whole thing, was that, like, yes, you have at this point met the criteria for this.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean you have this condition except for right now. So, like, it's that when factors are a certain way in my life, I reach a point of stress,
and you exhibit certain behaviours.
Exactly right. And
so, okay, you can go on some medication for the moment, but let's look deeper into the set of circumstances.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so for me, who's even going to therapy and medication much later, again, it's not meaningful unless you unpick the life that you've lived.
Which has always been my thing. It's like therapy is not just going to therapy and taking some pills. It's like a big undertaking of work. And the point is, you know, to undertake, it's like a radical undertaking. It's a reckoning. It's a, I need to change things. And like, by the way, and I want to be really clear about this is not to dismiss people who have neurological issues.
Sure.
And and the thing is, like, those people exist. There are people who are, you know,
need to be medicated,
schizophrenic and need to be in a facility that can help them.
Yes.
It's not just schizophrenic, but any kind of thing. And the way it was put to me by a mental health professional was like, consider yourself lucky because you actually don't have a neurological problem. You have got an emotional problem. And that doesn't mean it's easy to overcome, because it is absolutely not easy to overcome.
Yes.
But I don't have brain damage. Right?
That's right. But isn't it interesting what I first said, that even when I'm much older, and of course my parents are therefore much older, they're still looking at that as a fixable, a fixable thing. Oh, well, you've been to therapy now, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's still not a looking at the details of the life.
Absolutely.
And I mean, our life became, well, you growing up, and me as mother, we were in what you often call the compound.
It was a compound, yeah.
Completely and utterly isolated from the world apart from the usual encounters. I went out to work, you went out to school.
For sure.
But and that's what I came to listening to that, if I'm looking at that, our life was completely sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of material comfort,
Yep.
plenty of, so-called life experiences like holidays and that sort of thing. As I said, material comfort. But separate from any interpersonal connections other than our own, and they're the same people. And for me, I've been with the same people for 68 years.
And the problem with that is that those people made you ill. Like,
that's right, and you have the same conversations. There's not an intellectual growth,
no,
other than when you step outside that compound.
Yeah.
And that's really come home to me. And
for sure.
I'm sure you'll refer to
the
statement later on that he makes.
Yeah, absolutely.
About social connection.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is the whole thing here, is that, like, a diagnosis does not say anything about a person's life. It tells you some things that they're exhibiting at that point in time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, like,
my anticipation anxiety.
Yeah, and so in this case, like with this Anthony character, this little boy, it's like, is he all these mental illnesses that need to be treated, or does his mother need to be removed from his life?
Yeah.
What's the actual thing causing this? And it's like, it's not just some internal thing that's wrong. There is nothing wrong with him.
Yeah.
His life is wrong with him.
And that has upset his
equilibrium, or whatever you call it. Yeah.
His inner body rebelling.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, when I got really overwhelmed and upset and I was emotionally dysregulated and I was alcoholic, like, what I didn't understand, because again, I'd never really been given tools to kind of like figure this out, and I had to kind of learn it the hard way. It's like, that is your body telling you that your life is wrong. That everything about how you're living is absolutely not how you want it to be, or how it should be for you. And like, again, I don't want to get too hippie with this and sort of like, hey, just, you got to sense things and make changes, man, and that's wellness. Like, no, that's all crap. Like, like, what I'm saying is, like, the big problems that I was having was like so many things to do with repressed, suppressed wants, needs, desires that weren't being met, as well as things from the past that hadn't been addressed and worked out, manifesting in my behavior and my thinking and all that sort of stuff.
But it goes to what we've talked about before in relation to this book, the word attunement. In doing this project, I finally unpicked that sense of frustration that I always felt. Well, on one hand, I'm attuned to not feeling ever terrific, not feeling right, but not being able to articulate that in the real sense. Oh, well, it's related to how I'm living.
Yeah.
Because I don't know any other way to live. And, people are supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just me. It's just me and the symptoms.
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. What was it that I wanted to bring up here? Oh, yeah. Like, again, like the relevance of a diagnosis, but also like some of the pitfalls with people who are traumatized anyway, stops them from ever really engaging with treatment properly, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So, like, he writes that, like, after a single traumatic incident, okay, for instance, a dog bite, an accident, witnessing a school shooting, children can indeed develop basic PTSD symptoms similar to those of adults, even if they live in safe and supportive homes. As a result of having the PTSD diagnosis, so this is where a diagnosis is useful, we now can treat the problems effectively, right? So again, it's not getting rid of one or the other. It's a harmony between
Yeah.
engaging with the mental health systems that you have available
Yeah.
to you, but also not going so far into them that you think that diagnosis you've been given is the whole story. It's not. And so he says, but in the cases of the troubled children with histories of abuse and neglect who show up in clinics, schools, hospitals, and police stations, the traumatic roots of their behaviours are less obvious, particularly because they rarely talk about having been hit,
Yes.
abandoned, or molested,
Yes.
even when asked. 82% of the traumatized children seen in the National Child Traumatic Stress Network do not meet diagnostic criteria for PTSD because they often are shut down, suspicious, or aggressive. They now receive pseudoscientific diagnoses such as oppositional defiant disorder, meaning this kid hates my guts and won't do anything I tell him to do, or disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, meaning he has temper tantrums. Having as many problems as they do, these kids accumulate numerous diagnoses over time. Before they reach their 20s, many patients have been 4, 5, 6, or more of these impressive but meaningless labels have been given them. If they receive treatment at all, they get whatever is being promulgated as the method of management du jour, medications, behavioral modification, or exposure therapy. These rarely work and often cause more damage. And it's like I was saying to you, when I was showing up in places, I was shut down. I wouldn't talk about like the real traumas and stuff like that. But I was also just being sort of like written off as basically having a problem that was the condition of being male. So I needed to just moderate my drinking, do some deep breathing, and kind of like get in touch with my feelings. And I'm like, no, that's not helping me. Like the meditation, I could barely sit long enough to meditate for 5 minutes.
I was going to say.
And the drinking is like, if I'm not drinking, I don't know what to do.
I'm not surviving.
If I stop drinking, I'll kill myself. Like that was quite literally my problem. And so like telling me to like curb the alcohol and then also telling me to go to AA, I'm like, I don't. The problem isn't the drinking is a symptom of something else.
That's right.
I'm trying to get to the root of my problems here.
But also, I think in that too is the association with, well, I've got this problem because of a one-off event.
Yeah.
When you're talking about trauma, you're talking about an ongoing lifestyle.
And
whether it's put on you by your parents or you put on you by different circumstances, or whether you're encountering that one abuser all the time because they're your mother or your father or your grandfather or uncle.
And your behavior keeps reinforcing the trauma because oftentimes it makes you vulnerable to be re-traumatized.
Yeah.
And he writes about a girl called Aisha who, she leaves the group home, goes out, takes drugs, ends up being sexually assaulted. And it says, Aisha can't articulate what she wants or needs and can't think through how she might protect herself. See, that's the thing. Like, traumatized people are so reactive that they're not even thinking about protecting themselves. And so...
and they're also, I think, oh, well, I'm such a shitty
worthless person. I'm going to get to it.
To me.
He writes that instead she lives in a world of actions. I would substitute actions for reactions. She lives in a world of reactions.
Yeah.
Right? And that's sort of the world I was in for a long time, is trying to explain her behavior in terms of victim-perpetrator isn't helpful, nor are labels like depression, oppositional defiant disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, bipolar disorder, or any of the other options our diagnostic manuals offer us. Research has helped us understand how Aisha experiences the world. why she cannot tell us what is going on with her, why she is so impulsive and lacking in self-protection, and why she views us as frightening and intrusive rather than as people who can help her. See, like I've said in the past, is like, you know, in order for therapy to work, you have to believe that therapy is, one, available to you,
Yeah.
B, a good thing, and then C, come in and actually be willing to take part. And it's like,
well, to trust.
yeah, and it's like if your understanding of therapy is like something that only rich people do, or something that's in TV shows, or, you know, you come from a culture where it's sort of denigrated to engage with it anyway. I mean, it's like there are so many barriers to entry that are like beyond, you know, it's way beyond like financial. It's just cultural. Like that's not even the realm of like the world I understand. You know,
Yeah,
and particularly when you're already in a heightened sort of heightened arousal state of arousal because you're traumatized and you're like, you know, you're reacting to everything.
Yeah.
It's like therapy is not really going to enter your life and become this wonderful, meaningful tool.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the fact that you're just getting these diagnoses projected onto you. It's like that is all getting in the way of like what's going on with this person.
Yeah.
None of it really works
Yeah.
in that sense, which is,
Yeah.
you know, but I think what the chapter ultimately makes a case for is that as I've said, you know, I think a diagnosis is you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's a useful framework, and medication might help you get a framework to then work on the other issues and all that sort of stuff. But I think this chapter, and this is, I think, what you were sort of implying before that I get to, which is that kind of the real cure or the real treatment for people is to actually go and live a life and don't deny our humanity and our social needs. Social support is a biological necessity. That's what he writes. And so understanding the kind of the main factors or influences of development, which cut across almost all diagnoses, like, you know, the stuff to do with your upbringing, like it's an awareness of that ultimately is going to save the day. It's not more diagnoses. It's, hey, you know, child abuse and this is real and let's talk, and you know, like a kind of communicative openness for everybody to participate in. You know, but certainly sociability and meeting some social needs. Like you just talked about the fact that, you know, this environment became so isolated, and it absolutely did. And, you know, the cure wasn't, or the treatment for your anxiety wasn't to keep placating your anxiety and keeping yourself closed off and protected from things that might make you anxious. It was to make friends and talk more and be in the world and develop your agency through living.
To be more outgoing.
Yeah.
Rather than, I mean, the solution here was, let's enclose ourselves.
Yeah. And those social needs, when they're met, are fulfilling. If you go and spend time with a friend and you laugh, you feel better.
Yes.
And I'm not saying laughter cures somebody who's just been like brutally, you know, brutalized. I don't mean that. I'm not stupid, but like...
No, but talking with others who might then have a similar experience, you know, you...
It's not to shut down.
No.
Right.
Whereas this environment, that's what it contributed to.
And I think in the same way that, you know, someone who's traumatized is reactive and kind of like steers away from the help, people who have these internalized lack of self-worth and what have you, I mean, the snowball kind of effect is that like you become increasingly more isolated. Like you get more anxious about things, and then you start shying away from that, and then you think, oh, I'm ugly and worthless, and so you don't want to make friends, and the friends you do have, you don't call them back. You lose That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
Big time.
Sure.
Like by the end of my sort of unraveling, I was in a situation where I was so alone.
Yeah.
And I had completely lost it. I'd completely shut down. I'd shunned everything. I'd just shut down my social life.
Yeah.
I couldn't maintain relationships. I stopped leaving the house, and you know, I just became increasingly isolated, which, guess what? The depression got worse. The problems I was having got worse. The paranoia got worse. The mania got worse. The drinking got worse.
The use of props got worse.
Yeah, like it all got worse.
Yeah.
So it was a retreat from life rather than a going into life.
Yeah.
But, you know, what facilitates that retreat is, you know, feeling like you can't have the conversations you need to have. You know, feeling like I should keep this stuff to myself.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Was it in that chapter that you read a whole host of things and...
The statistics?
We ticked them off as having experienced them all?
Yeah, I think it's possibly this one, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. So, well, I'll read a little bit more of this book. It's great, right? So, everything about us, our brains, our minds, and our bodies is geared toward collaboration in social systems. This is our most powerful survival strategy, the key to our success as a species, and it is precisely this that breaks down in most forms of mental suffering. As we saw in part 2 of this book, the neural connections in brain and body are vitally important for understanding human suffering, but it is important not to ignore the foundations of our humanity, relationships and interactions that shape our minds and brains when we are young and that give substance and meaning to our entire lives. People with histories of abuse, neglect, or severe deprivation will remain mysterious and largely untreated unless we heed the admonition of Alan Strauss, quote, "To fully understand how we become the persons we are, the complex step-by-step evolution of our orientations, capacities, and behavior over time requires more than a list of ingredients, however important any one of them might be. It requires an understanding of the process of development, how all of these factors work together in an ongoing way over time," end quote. He writes ultimately that our focus should ultimately be, regardless of all these diagnoses, and trying to work out like what category and what label to ascribe. The focus should ultimately be on the central principles that underlie the protean symptoms of chronically traumatized children and adults. Pervasive biological and emotional dysregulation, tick. Failed or disrupted attachment, tick. Problems staying focused and on track, tick. And a hugely deficient sense of coherent personal identity and competence, tick. These issues transcend and include almost all diagnostic categories, but treatment that doesn't put them front and center is more than likely to miss the mark. Our great challenge is to apply the lessons of neuroplasticity, the flexibility of brain circuits, to rewire the brains and reorganize the minds of people who have been programmed by life itself to experience others as threats and themselves as helpless.
Wow. Tick.
It is not about getting a label and getting on meds. It is about, and by the way, you might have to start there. And that's, as I've said many times, this is not encounter to diagnoses and medications. I have several diagnoses, and I have been on many different medications, and they have been absolutely necessary and have helped me,
get to a certain point.
get a foundation going to work on the other stuff. But it's the other stuff, the bigger stuff, the bigger picture, that is where all the real ground of like self-acceptance and change and rewiring, that's where the progress happens. That's where the life can actually be saved, and from merely saved to actually resurrected and worth living. And that's the real difference. You know, it's often here, take some SSRIs so you stop feeling bad. It's like, well, now I'm not feeling bad, but I'm feeling all these other things. You've maybe saved that person feeling depressed, but have you given them a life that's actually worth living? And the gap between treatment, like I've saved you, I've stopped you from being so depressed that you're going to kill yourself, and now you have a life that you want to live, that gap is enormous. That's where all the real work happens on those big things. And they're related to all these fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And really that's kind of it. Like the big conclusion was sort of was really that like, you know, much like this program itself, you know, this is about writing, but it's also about life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that in kind of other areas as well.
Yeah, and you know, getting back to the project as a whole, that's what we were seeking. We were seeking to come to terms with where we'd ended up and how that could change, and that was unpicking the past.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll read the conclusion to this chapter, and then that'll do. Excuse me, and then that will do. And the question here is sort of, where does Australia fit in with this? So,
oh yes.
he writes that when I go to Europe to teach, I am often contacted by officials at the ministries of health in the Scandinavian countries, the UK, Germany, or the Netherlands, and asked to spend an afternoon with them, sharing the latest research on the treatment of traumatized children, adolescents, and their families. The same is true for many of my colleagues. These countries have already made... Now, he's speaking as someone based in the United States. Okay,
Yes.
so I want to make that clear, and it is
Yes.
clear when in his writing. So, and we're Australian. So, these countries have already made a commitment to universal healthcare, as has Australia, more or less, ensuring a guaranteed minimum wage, paid parental leave for both parents after a child is born, and a high quality childcare for all working mothers.
Yes.
Think Australia's lacking there?
Ooh.
Somewhat.
We won't get into that.
Well, see, I think the answer is Australia's sort of halfway between.
I think they're caught up in a whole lot of things that need to be looked at.
Yeah. So, BVDK goes on to write this. He says, and this is the final paragraph of chapter 10, final paragraph of part 3. Could this approach to public health have something to do with the fact that the incarceration rate in Norway is 71 in 100,000, in the Netherlands 81 in 100,000, and the US 781 in 100,000. That's astronomical.
Yeah, just blows your
beyond belief, yeah. While the crime rate in those countries, Scandinavia, is much lower than in the United States, and the cost of medical care about half. 70% of prisoners in California spent time in foster care while growing up. The United States spends $84 billion a year to incarcerate people at approximately $44,000 per prisoner. The Northern European countries, a fraction of that amount. Instead, they invest in helping parents to raise their children in safe and predictable surroundings. Their academic test scores and crime rates seem to reflect the success of those investments. And before Mum says something that gets us thrown off the internet and never allowed to enter the United States,
I will stop.
No. But before, just to finish with that. The point that he's making is from the individual to the wider society.
Yes.
It's not just about treating a diagnosis or a diagnostic criteria or even inventing one. It's about looking at the person's life and seeing what their needs are in their life. Same on a social level. It's not about putting out all these spot fires and policing people and fixing this and this and this. It's about actually coming together and setting a foundation for people to live well.
Yeah.
And that starts with having conversations and understanding what the requirements are for a good life to be made.
Yes.
And as we've said and what we advocate for is it starts with a conversation. It starts with talking. And
It starts with honesty.
Starts with honesty. An ability to reflect and be open. I think I said on one of the later episodes was like to be able to say you've hurt me without anger and malice, and for the person to receive it without hurt. You know, just you did this, it hurt me. And it's had an effect. And for everybody to go, okay, as opposed to in my father's case, I didn't hurt you that much, deny, shut you down. And for me to get increasingly angry and hysterical and fuck you and da-da-da.
Yeah.
You just want to be able to talk matter-of-factly. And how we did these episodes, maybe that's something that you could do. Sit down with somebody. It doesn't have to be this book. It could be any book, and listen to an audiobook together. It was actually really fun.
Yeah.
I want to do more of it. Yeah. Give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find the show. And if you've got a minute, give us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. Bye.